Hello, welcome to my next lecture, that is Origin and Evolution of Temporal Acrates and Fossae. Temporal fossae and temporal arches are very important ear region in reptiles, and it is helping in the reptiles for attachment of muscles which can strongly bound together, and the same way the attachment of lower jaw and as well as upper jaw for the capturing of food molecules or for the predatory mechanism is very important in reptiles actually. We know that reptiles are bit voracious feeders. They often take more food and kill the animals. In that way, these articulation, bone articulation and bone modification is very important aspects actually. We know that reptiles form heterogeneous group of vertebrates. You find many number of innumerable reptiles in the animal kingdom. They are the true land vertebrates that gave up the practice to go back to the water to lay eggs actually. To practice to go back to the water to the eggs is the going back to the water for laying eggs or a reproductive purpose is said to be the ancestral characteristic feature. So that is very common in amphibia. So that clearly indicates that most probably the amphibian ancestor is said to be, or amphibian stem is said to be the ancestor for reptiles here. Things that before swam in the water now went upon the ground. This is something like, this is also clearly indicates that, earlier they used to go for swimming or they live in the water. Now they are completely adapted to the land, land dwelling condition. Emerging from aquatic environment, the reptiles became successful animal to adapt to the new regime actually. It is true too, because during the course of evolution, the amphibians, later stage of amphibian animals, they try to move to the land and try to live in the land for a long time, and that way they adapted completely to the land area actually. So the reptiles dominated the globe in their early phase of evolutionary history and are represented today by a few divergent specialized forms actually. We have, once upon a time, they were ruling the earth, they were ruling the complete globe during the during early phase, but now they have very representative animals at this moment actually. In fact, the emergence of reptile as a true land dwelling vertebrates offer the greatest dramatic event in the course of organic evolution here. So you see that during the Paleozoic era, the amphibians, right from the Carboniferous to the Permian, period, you find that very primitive reptiles were originated and said to be the stem reptiles. From there, the sauropsids, synapsids, and other organisms evolved. So, by the time of Mesozoic era, Mesozoic condition, so during the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous, they were predominantly developed and grown as a gigantic animals, and they started ruling the earth, and they were said to be the apex animal during this period actually. So the later, that is during the Cenozoic era, they started faded out. They faded out. That means the extinction of these reptiles took place during the Cenozoic era. As you see in this area, it is completely, the big dinosaurs were extinct actually. The reasons for these things, just we'll discuss some other class. The emergence of reptiles from labyrinthodont amphibia was so gradual that on the basis of skeletal remains alone, it is difficult to ascertain whether some of them are reptiles that have just ceased being reptiles or amphibians on way to transfer into the, what is it, reptilian. So these ancestral reptilian stock during the Permian underwent an extensive radiation into 4 or 5 well-defined groups. So at the right side, just I have shown this ancestral reptilian stock, which could be the most primitive and ancestral part of the reptilians. So this might have given rise to a well-developed or well-defined group of reptiles nowadays actually. The stem reptiles. The stem reptiles have been grouped together into the order Cartilosauria. They were contemporary to the primitive amphibians of late Pennsylvanian and early Permian time actually. In the later part of the Permian, the amphibians were outnumbered by these reptiles actually. So earlier the amphibians were ruling, and the later gradually the increase in number of reptiles made to overrule the amphibians during the later part of Permian period. Let us see that the reptilian origin, that is ancestry of Simoria. For a long period of time, Simoria, the lower Permian sediment from the Simoor of Taxus, was considered to be the distinguished member of the order Cartilosauria, considering as an intermediate between the amphibian and reptiles actually. So said to be the Simoria is the link between the amphibian and reptiles actually, because they show some characteristic feature of either, both the side, amphibian and reptile side. Simoria was a small form, about 5.1 centimeter length actually. It's very, very tiny. It had very few reptilian features like an apsidal skull, occipital condyle, large parietal eye, and 5 digits actually. However, the recent studies, so the characters of Simoria have been re-examined, and they showed that the joints in the fingers of Simoria are just like amphibian. It had only one pair of sacral ribs. Generally, it is the characters of amphibians. It had traces of lateral sense organs on its skull. It is once again the primitive characteristic feature of amphibian. Moreover, it existed too late in the time, that is pre-Permian. So we see that in the previous study I said late Permian period, most probably the early reptilians were evolved. So whereas this one, the Simoria, is said to be the early Permian, that is pre-Permian, that is Paleozoic. It is become the ancestor to, there is something like a doubt on the this animal, whether it is the ancestor for reptilia or not. So on the merit of these characters, Simoria is no longer considered as an ideal primitive reptile actually. Let us see that the Limnosceles ancestry. So the work of Romer 1946 suggests that Limnosceles, the Captorinoma of Cartilosaur, is the primitive reptile. The fossil form of Limnosceles obtained from the late Carboniferous and early Permian strata in New Mexico illustrates many characters that one might expect to find in a member of the primitive reptilian stock actually. Limnosceles was about 5 feet in length, and half of this length was dominated by the tail. So this is another interesting character. They showed that elongated tail in the reptilian characteristic feature actually. Its skull was an apsida and was compressed from the side to side actually. It is a slightly laterally compressed skull find. So recent investigation suggested that Captorinoma, that is the Cartilosaurs, gave rise to Therapsida. Just mentioned the pictures on the right side here. Another side, it is the Chelonia groups. Sauropsida, land vertebrates that presently, the present day land vertebrates actually. There is a doubt about the Ichthyosaurus and Plesiosaurus have evolved from this, Captorinoma Cartilosaur. Actually, there is something like, a question mark behind it, whether these Ichthyosaurus and Plesiosaur came from the same, ancestor where the Therapsid, Chelonia and Sauropsids have evolved. When you see the history of reptiles are familiar to man evidence from the fact that there are frequent mentioning of snakes, turtle, alligators in Eastern and Western mythologies actually. We have seen that God Vishnu as its third incarnation in the form of a turtle. Vashuki, a great snake on which the earth rest. To churn the ocean to bring the Amrita, a liquor of immortality, we have seen. The crocodile and snakes were worshipped in Egypt. In Mexico, a feathered serpentine or a serpent is the image of the fair god. Look at that. The reptilian skull differ from those of the early amphibians actually. When we see that the evolutionary tree, one we have to think that the reptiles, what is that, skull and as well as limb modification. Among the skull modification, teeth modification is very, very interesting because we come to know that by studying the teeth or old skull modification or old skull plates, we can come to know that whether the animal is carnivorous or herbivorous or omnivorous, etc. Actually. Another thing is that what kind of plates, bony plates are present in the skull. That is also indicates the type of the animal and the length of the animal, or the complete morphological structure can be generated based on the skull availability actually. So in this case, the reptilian skull differ from those of the early amphibians actually. When we see the first ancestor of reptile and the skull of the first ancestor of reptile and the amphibian skull, when we compare this thing, the skull is totally different than the amphibian skull. So they lack of otic notch, so they have a otic notch here where it is articulated to the posterior part of the body, the next part of the body, and this is absent here. And the several small bones at the rear of the skull root, several small bones at the posterior part of the skull is missing actually. So the reptiles have a number of bones in the lower jaw, only one of which the dentary bears teeth actually. So the reptiles have many number of bones in the lower, dentary, lower jaw. So only the dentary portion of the lower jaw bears teeth. That is very quite interesting one. Whereas in amphibia it is not like that. So you don't find as a teeth modification or teeth bearing jaws actually. Behind the dentary, a small bone, the articular, forms a joint with a quadrate bone near the rear of the skull actually. So only the articular bone which supports for attaching the dentary into the the upper part of the skull. The upper part of the skull of reptiles is modified, giving the reptile a far more efficient and powerful jaw action and making the skull very light actually. See, the upper part of the skull modification, during the course of development of reptiles, if you see from the primitive reptiles to the modern reptile, you see that there is several modification you can observe. So what is this modification? All these modification took place to make the solid skull into a lighter skull. So that is the thing, because the body of the reptile itself is very heavy. So to minimize the weight of the anterior part of the body, that is the skull, so there is some modification took place during the course of evolution. So the reptiles are classified mainly on the structure of their skull, in which there are temporal vacuity or fauciae or empty spaces in the temporal region. So if you see the skull of any reptile, you find the cavities at the temporal region, that is the lateral region, and this region is a kind of erosion of, or something like degeneration of some of the bony plates happened during the course of evolution, by which a vacuity or the cavities are formed actually. So the function of these temporal fauciae, these cavities are called as temporal fauciae, and fauciae is the cavity, and temporal, the cavity which is present at the lateral side of the temporal region of the skull. That is why it is called as temporal fauciae. Probably enable the jaw muscle to protrude out onto the upper surface of the skull. So this is the one it is kindly attachment of the skull, attachment of the muscles to the cavity. So the temporal fossa is a shallow depression on the sides of the skull, bounded by temporal lines. Actually, many number of skull bones you can find here. So if you see that this is one vacuity and the second vacuity here, and many number of bones are articulated upper and lower side and the sideways also. So this process of monocondyle skull that rests on the long neck, made up of atlas, axis and other cervical vertebrae. So this kind of skull which is attached to the atlas, axis and the cervical part of the body. So this portion, so the posterior part of the body. Generally in reptiles with a big jaw and a large head, the skull becomes too heavy for them actually, for the neck to hold it actually. So therefore the vacuity or fossae are developed actually. So these openings actually gave the skull extra space for the attachment of the large muscles actually. So here these openings also to compensate this vacuity. So there is a lot of muscles attached to this thing. Muscles develop so that it can attach to the cavity. So the temporal fenestrae have been used to classify amniotes by many types actually, by Osborn 1903. In 1903, the Osborn classified based on the presence or absence of temporal fascia, temporal fenestrae. So he classified the reptiles into anapsid, diapsid, parapsid and synapsid actually. And the temporal fenestrae are the large holes on the side of the skull. As I said earlier, it is the large holes which are developed in the course of evolution actually. Here some of the diagrammatic representations. You can see that in synapsida, so this is the modification of skull, and this is the representative skull of parapsida, and this is the representative skull of anapsida, eurapsida, and as the diapsida, as normally you find in the lizard like this actually. So let us see one by one here. So anapsida skull generally you find in Cartilosauria, that is the most primitive reptiles, so-called reptiles, and the Chelonia group. Of course, this is the Chelonia group where the turtles and tortoises are living, are present, are grouped actually. So this is the most primitive type of skull occurred in Labyrinthodont amphibians and the primitive reptilia. We call it the Synovium. The anapsids were the first reptile to appear in the Carboniferous period, nearly about 345 and 280 million years ago. The anapsid means without arch, meaning that they have no fenestrae in their skull actually. There is no vacuity in the skull. So the Chelonia that today include tortoises and turtles still possess this kind of skull, which has complete skull grouping without temporal vacuity or fossa. As the skull is completely covered by bones, this type of skull is heavy or strong actually. Turtles have of course we know that turtles and tortoises have very less, very small skull. When you see that picture here, you can see that the upper you have a parietal, and the side you have a post-orbital. This is the orbital region, and the pre-orbital and the post-orbital region. You have the jugal bone here, and the quadrata jugal bone here, and the squamosal bones here. So in the anapsida skull, you don't find any vacuity of the cavity here. It is completely articulated. All the bone plates are articulated here actually. Right. In the parapsida, you find an ichthyosaurus, that is the fossil reptiles, living aquatic reptile. This type of skull evolved in the ichthyosaurus. This skull had only one pair of temporal vacuity, that is, you have here, what I am showing here, this is the cavity here, where this is what we call it as supratemporal fossae, otherwise we call it as supratemporal fossae, which is made out of the partial degeneration of parietal bone and the partial post-orbital and the squamosal bone helps in formation of the vacuity here actually. So that means it is in the superior part of the skull. It is roofed by the parietal skull here, and the lower side you have the squamosal and the post-orbital actually here. And the rest of the things it is same as the anapsid skull here. Right. In the diapsid skull you have two important fenestrae or vacuity you can find: supratemporal fossae, infratemporal fossae. Generally you find that is in the spinodon, snakes, lizards, crocodiles and dinosaurs actually. You know that spinodon is the living fossil, and the snakes, we know that the movement of skull bones very rapid, and it is like helps in engulfing the whole the prey into the digestive tract actually. So of course the lizard, crocodiles and dinosaurs having a different mechanism. So the presence of these two temporal vacuity, actually supra and infratemporal vacuity, make the more lighter, the skull more lighter and loosely articulated bones here and there actually. So that is why you can see that the movement of the bones or movement of the mouth part in the snake is so easy for them actually. Whereas in the synapsid skull, that is generally found in Pelycosaurus and Therapsid, that is the primitive organisms actually, and you can find only the infratemporal fossae. This is infratemporal fossae. You have seen that supratemporal fossae and infratemporal fossae, whereas in Synapsida we have only infratemporal fossae. So in the formation of infratemporal fossae, you don't find the parietal bone is taking part in formation of the infratemporal fossae here. So one thing just what you have to understand is the post-orbital and squamosal on other side, a jugal and the quadrata jugal at the base, they help in formation of the vacuity in the synapsida cavity. Thank you my dear friends. Just you follow the next video for the continuation of this subject. Thank you very much.